This morning's guest wanted to start for Joe Paterno. He even wanted to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't make it. Now he's starting for the March of Dimes. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the community room at South Carolina Bank and Trust in Murrells Inlet. We're focused on the March of Dimes ambassador families, and we're visiting with Professor Mark Mitchell, a professor at Coastal Carolina University and a board member for the PD division of the March of Dimes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Professor Mitchell,
Good
thanks
morning.
so much for coming in. Do you mind if we call you Mark?
Please call me Mark.
You were about to say, please call me Mark.
Please call me
That's
Mark,
right.
and it is my pleasure to be
Although
with you
you
this
go
morning.
by Professor Mitchell almost every other day.
Occupational hazard, let's call it. But
That's right,
folks
that's
know me
right.
best know it's simple old Mark.
Simple old Mark. Now, your kids don't call you Mark. They're your dad.
You know, sometimes they do, being silly. They'll
that
decide
right?
that we're going to be on a first name basis, and we try to nip that real quick.
I bet you do. I bet you do. That's right. I bet you do. And on a Monday morning, are you heading from here to school? Or
Absolutely.
You're teaching.
We are. I have a dual role. I'm a professor of marketing, so I have my own classes that I handle.
Right.
But then I have the privilege of serving as the chair of my department. So there are 20 colleagues that I work to support.
Wow.
So on one hand, I do my own work, and my own work is a demonstration project, and it keeps me engaged serving my students.
Right.
But then an equal amount of my time is how can I find ways to help my colleagues do their job the best that they can.
And you all have recently kicked off a business school out at Coastal.
We are a strong Wall College of Business.
Right.
With a recent hire of a number of things that occur. Great leadership from Dave DiCenzo,
Yeah.
recently coming through the presidential search process, named as our president, was our former dean before he became our provost.
That's right.
And a national search yielded a gentleman by the name of Henry Lowenstein. He'll be coming to us from Cal State Bakersfield.
From
Well, he'll
Bakersfield, I
assume
saw that.
our deanship. And I will tell you that in the search process, our faculty just fell in love with him. We're very excited about him, found him very engaging. He's been very successful in his past, and we look forward anxiously to him coming on board to help us
So
continue to do well.
he'll be the new dean of
He'll be the new dean of the Wall College of Business, yeah.
following in Dave DiCenzo's shoes.
Yes.
And
And
so you
it's-
all have had a little hiatus when he took on the provost slot.
But, you know, we have caretakers, and we're very fortunate for that. Dave DiCenzo decided that in my absence, as I go to the provost, we want to make sure that we do things well. And that, from a dean standpoint, is we have internal operations, you know, keep the trains running on time.
Right,
And you've
right.
got constituents. You've got friends of the university, friends of the college
Right.
who help and support us. So Dave wanted to make sure that those two areas were well served. Sam Wathen is our interim dean for operations, fantastic associate dean, who, with my help, we help keep the trains running on time. Then retired executive Harold Stowe, who serves on our board of visitors. Harold serves as the interim dean for development. So Harold's role is to keep those external relationships going, those fundraising opportunities, keep that work alive while we anticipate new leadership. So it was a very innovative plan. I think it's worked very
I
well.
don't think I knew that Harold was doing that. I saw a picture
Yeah.
of Harold on the front of the Herald this week with a check presentation. He also chairs the Myrtle Beach Air Base
Absolutely.
Redevelopment Authority.
Absolutely.
And they were accepting a $3.5 million check from Buddy Stires for the Robert Spear
Yep.
Center out there at
That's
the
right.
former Air Force Base. It's fascinating. I don't think I knew he held that role with you all.
He knows the folks. He knows
Yeah.
the opportunities. He is so well committed, having worked for the Wall family, committed to the College of Business, committed to Coastal, and we're pleased to have him.
Absolutely,
Very much so.
Mark. How long have you been here in the area?
I've been along the Grand Strand here at Coastal for about 18 months.
Okay.
Started here in fall of '05.
Great.
I came here after 11 years up in the upstate at the University of South Carolina. What used to be USC Spartanburg became USC Upstate.
USC Upstate. Now, does that take in more than Spartanburg now? For instance,
Yes,
Springville
and
or
always
Anderson?
did.
Right.
It was, the interesting thing was, from an operational standpoint, we always served the area, Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson.
Sure.
But you had a name, USC Spartanburg, that maybe didn't capture the total work of the university.
Right,
So the
right.
decision was to not so much reposition the university as much
Sure.
as to make sure that the name captured
Everyone understood.
the operation. So we became USC Upstate.
That's great. That's a tremendous area. Of course, it impacts a lot of folks, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously was the marketing department as pretty substantial there.
It's a little smaller institution there.
Right.
And my role wasn't as much as in a leadership role serving my colleagues as much as it was my role was teaching my classes and then heading up something we called the Center for Economic and Community Development. So it was my role to find those partner opportunities, the organizations that we could serve. And I've been heavily involved in nonprofit work, and that really is an outgrowth of not just my own interest personally, but professionally. We've always been able to find ways to serve a church mission, Habitat for Humanity, or American Red Cross, to try to do some research work for those folks. Oftentimes they have a whole slew of problems, but they lack the resources to be able to address them. So what if we can help bring the resources to your problem and provide a great service? And as a state institution, that's a part of our responsibility, is to service our region.
Are you a Palmetto State native?
I'm not. I'm a native of a little farming town in Pennsylvania. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh in a time when the Steelers are winning Super Bowls, the Pirates are winning World Series, and I assumed every kid grows up when their sports teams are winning. They're champions.
Winning everything.
That's all I ever knew.
That's right.
That's all I ever knew.
That's Franco Harris, Lynn Swann.
Absolutely. Those were
like
my boyhood idols.
That's tremendous.
In fact, our athletic director at Coastal, Warren Kogel, will tell you he played for Joe Paterno at Penn State.
No.
His college roommate, if I recall, is Jack Ham, who was a linebacker for the Steelers. As a kid, that was the linebacker I wanted to be. And playing for Coach Paterno, that was the guy that I wanted to play for.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a real big market for small, slow, undersized linebackers at Penn State, so I found myself going elsewhere.
That's hilarious, yes. Did you stay in Pennsylvania for school?
I did. I went to Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania. I went to work in the food industry for a number of years and elected to go back to Pennsylvania for master's school. And then eventually I'm a proud graduate of Mississippi State University, where I got my doctoral training.
Wow, down in Jackson. Is that
in Starkville.
Forgive me. That's right.
In small town Starkville, Mississippi.
There is a school there in Jackson.
There is. There is Jackson State University.
Okay, forgive me.
Yeah.
A good connection there. Now, when someone thinks about being a professor of is that something you thought about for a long time? Of course, having been in the food industry,
I never appreciated it as much as what I saw every day at home was my dad. My dad was a math professor.
Is that right?
Now, I went to school for business, and I started to work in sales. And then I found myself as a traveling person. I'd go to the airport on Monday, come home on Friday. It's tough to do anything else. And I thought, well, I think I'll go back to school, and I went back and got my master's degree. And then I'm deciding, do I want to go back to my company, or maybe I want to transition a little bit. And then I got to thinking, well, Pops always seemed to enjoy his work. He always seemed to be home at night. He always got great satisfaction out of what he did. So I worked with my dean at the time to find a school where I thought I'd be a good fit, and Mississippi State turned out to be that school.
And that was your first teaching position?
Yes. As a graduate teaching assistant, going through my training. And then after graduation, I've been in South Carolina ever since. I worked at Francis Marion for a year. Then I was up at the Upstate for 11 years before now here to Coastal. And so, I've been in the Palmetto State since 1993.
So from the PD to the Upstate, back to the Grand Strand,
absolutely.
Kind of the PD.
Absolutely.
That's right. Of course, most of our viewers are in the PD in southeastern North Carolina. A little less than a third are down here in Horry, but obviously much of what we do. And the Herald, the Myrtle Beach Herald, is now the sponsor of the show, and so surely the Herald's reach is principally this area, which is a great opportunity to get folks like yourself to come in, not only to talk about marketing and the Wall College, but also in opportunities like the Ambassador Families and the March of Dimes. A lot goes into the March of Dimes behind the scenes that folks don't think about.
I didn't know it. I must be totally candid with you. I'm a parent. We're going through a pregnancy. It turns out to be a high-risk pregnancy. My wife is put on bed rest at about 30 weeks, 29 and a half weeks. This is new to us. They tell us, well, your children might come early, but we're prepared for this. Well, okay, the hospital's prepared for this. As a parent, this is new to us. Holy mackerel. So our children were born. They are healthy. After 50 days in intensive care, they come home. And not within about maybe a month or so, someone contacted us from the March of Dimes, and they said, we'd like to ask you if you'd like to participate in a program. Tell us about it. Well, you've just been through an intensive care experience in a neonatal intensive care unit. Did you know that the March of Dimes is heavily involved in both the founding and then the sustaining funding of neonatal intensive care, or NICUs? I did not.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of the March of Dimes from polio.
Right, sure.
I knew of the March of Dimes as working for birth defects or to make
Sure.
birth defects less likely. I knew as my wife, well, I'm to take folic acid during a period of childbearing years that makes certain birth defects less likely as a result of March of Dimes research. So I knew that. I had no idea really their tie into neonatal intensive care units. So you go through an experience where after 50 days, you know, in 50 days you go through the NICU, as we have a NICU up in Florence.
Right, sure.
You go through that experience, and now someone says, would you be willing to tell your story to help us build awareness, interest, appreciation for the March of Dimes? I don't know how you could say anything but yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so we've been involved ever since. We've been the formal ambassador family for a few years up in the upstate, and then we've always had a family team since that time. And then this year I was asked to serve on the board, to join the board service with our
Yes.
chair, Franklin Long, to serve on the board of the March of Dimes here by Ms. Joe Fisher. I welcome that chance to do so. I happen to work at Coastal Carolina. We're transitioning Walk America from the pavilion
That's
onto
right.
our campus.
Big move, big move.
Coach David Bennett, our honorary walk chairperson. It's one of those things where I guess in my mind, if you're looking, do you need any hint or any proof that there's some sort of master plan at work? This is one of those
That
times.
would be it. That's hilarious. That would be it. And that surely would be. When you think about, of course, you mentioned 20 peers in the department,
Yes.
folks you're supporting as
Yes.
chair of the department. You're pretty active already beginning to recruit them, I'm sure.
We have been working as a campus. You know, I'm a visual person.
Right.
So one of the things I did recently was I just took some of the images we had from my kids when they were born
Oh, yeah.
and the images of today. And, you know, if I took a sheet of paper that's 8.5 by 11 inches,
Right.
my children were about 12 inches long when they were born. So when folks see those images, it really grabs your heart. You may see a billboard out and about town where there's a hand outstretched
That's right.
and that baby in there. Again, that baby is less than the length of a sheet of paper.
Right, right. right.
You go to the grocery store today and you buy a bag of apples. It's a 3-pound bag of apples. My children weighed 2.5 pounds and 2 pounds 14 ounces when they were born. So they weighed less than that bag of apples you're going to buy at the grocery store. So I've been trying to use lots of visual images
That's a great
across
power.
campus that people they appreciate the work of the March of Dimes. They see a success story, and my children are 6 years old and healthy and vital, 2 of my 3 kids. And we're slowly going through that process then. We're building new teams amongst student organizations, amongst different colleagues around campus,
That's
and we'll have a
tremendous.
team within the Wall College of Business as well.
You will have some dramatic excitement by the time April. It's mid-April, end of
Absolutely.
April. Is it April 28th?
April 28th, that
Yeah.
final Saturday
Right,
in
which is
in
the
April.
National Walk America Day. A
Absolutely.
tremendous day to do. And all
Absolutely.
the schools in Horry County, I'm sure you followed as a new board member, Mark, I believe in the state. 2 of the
Absolutely.
top 2 schools in the state came out of
Forest Brook
Horry County.
Elementary, just incredible. My kids happen to go to St. James Elementary,
Right.
long time with the team. As I would making some phone calls on behalf of Ms. Fisher and the March of Dimes, say, well, we'd like to talk to you about, we know your school has had a team.
Yeah.
We'd like to talk to you about that. One of the interesting things I find is, we have ambassador kids who have been ambassadors in the past. We absolutely look forward to participating because, Walker, well, golly, a few years back, he was our ambassador, and he happens to be in our school.
Right, right.
And so it's exciting. I think at St. James Elementary, where my kids go, and Mary Beth Heath, who is our principal,
yes.
they've been a long supporter of the March of Dimes. But I think she takes some great pride in the fact that those 2 little boys in her kindergarten
Right.
program,
Your 2 sons.
we've been supporting a good organization,
Yeah.
and now we see folks that have directly benefited from that
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely.